welcome to Season 2 of the Como Factor podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Christine Strobush.
And I'm Sonal Trivedi. Do you struggle to accept, enact, or embrace change? If so, you've come to the right podcast. True transformative change can feel overwhelming and often unsustainable. Using the Como Factor as your guide, you will discover that you can accomplish more than you ever thought possible.
If you have ever wanted to undergo a personal or business transformation, are looking for inspiration, or just want to hear some great stories from leaders that have undergone true transformation, this is the podcast for you. Friends, we have an exciting lineup for this season on the Como Factor. To kick off our first episode, I'd like to start with a wise quote by a lady named Susan Gale. Susan said, "The time of one chapter is just the beginning of another. Read on. The best part is always yet to come." I just love that. This is incredibly relevant for us today as we're going to walk you through a simple but effective process to close out, or as we call it, complete 2020, so that we can begin 2021 with a healthy and a fresh mindset. You may be wondering, what do we mean by that? So think back to January 1st of 2020. We all talked about 2020 vision. So many of us, myself included, envisioned a better year, even a better decade of big dreams and ambitious goals. However, for many people, 2020 will go down as one of the worst years in modern history. Between the global pandemic, the shutdowns, and the layoffs, 2020 was not the year that everyone had hoped for. Many people were eager to start 2021 and close the book on 2020 for good.
That's so true, Christine. It seems like everyone was anxious for the new year to begin, allowing us to have a fresh slate, a blank canvas, to be able to start all over again. No matter how challenging and chaotic this past year has been for anyone, it's important that we all take the time to close out the year. And I think generally there seems to be a feeling heard from all sides of the world that the post-pandemic world will need a massive change. I mean, if you think about it, COVID imposed so many new and drastic stresses in people's lives. The need to adapt to constant change was obvious. And it really felt as though each and every one of us were at one point or another pushed to our limits and beyond. No one escaped the negative effects of the pandemic. But take a moment to ask yourself, was there a lesson to take away from all that happened last year that can actually help you to reset your life? We know that it's so very easy to dwell on the past, but that never serves us well. We need to accept whatever happened and let it go so that we can be free to create the best year possible in 2021. And one way that we can do this is to take the time to celebrate our successes of the previous year and complete the year so that we can create an even better 2021. And if you think about it, if we focus on the positive aspects of 2020 rather than the negative ones, we can celebrate the year and move forward stronger in 2021. It essentially allows us to look back and get closure for the previous year, rather than look at it as a suppression of the potential with which we began 2020.
You are absolutely right, Sonal. There was so much in 2020 that was out of our control. Fear and uncertainty were all around us, in the news, on social media, and so on. And you and I, we spent a lot of time encouraging our friends, family, and listeners to embrace a meaningful mindset and not accept a mindset that is filled with fear or scarcity. If we aren't careful and intentional, we could risk bringing our 2020, quote, baggage, if you will, into 2021. And instead, we should focus our energy on closing out 2020 in a healthy and positive way and know deep in our hearts that the best is yet to come. You know what they say, Those who don't learn from history are destined to repeat it. So let's learn from 2020 and make 2021 even better.
You are absolutely correct, Christine. So, listeners, for those of you that joined us in season 1 of our podcast, you're aware that both Christine and I have a ritual, a tradition, if you like, of choosing a word of the year. It's like an anchor for us that helps us to be reminded of our goals and purpose, a motivation, and an inspiring word. Christine, would you like to share with everyone what your word of 2020 was?
You know I would. So my word for 2020 was best. I was determined to make 2020 the absolute best year of my life.
Well, I have to say that I saw you give your best, your very best to everything. And as you know, my word was believe.
Sonal, I absolutely love your word, and I think it suits you perfectly. What do you think are a few examples of how you used your word to anchor your life, focus, and decision making in 2020?
That is a great question, Christine. Well, first, it's important for our listeners to understand that I use my word of the year to really motivate myself. And you've probably heard that what you put your attention on grows. So focus on what you want rather than what you don't want. With that in mind, I had a couple of signs with my word of the year, believe, strategically placed around my house and office, and also very prominently on my vision board. Professionally, Christine, you and I launched our own company last year. In order to have a mindset of being all in on that decision, I really had to look within and ask myself, do I believe I can do this? And not only do this, but do I believe that I can do this in a way that would help us to be successful? And the answers to those questions really gave me clarity that I needed in order to trust that launching the Como Group was the very right thing to do.
And girl, I'm glad you had that clarity because it was the right thing to do.
It sure was. It sure was. So another example is when we started our initial conversations about wanting to write a book. We both had a lifelong dream of wanting to do that someday. But again, I knew that last year was different because I finally believed that I could do it and set out to put it into motion with you. And I don't mean just believing that I had the skill sets, but believing that I would do it and do it within the time frame that we had allowed ourselves, which was only approximately 6 months.
Yeah. I mean, we really didn't know what we were getting into when we set that goal, but I'm so proud of what we accomplished. And I think your word hits it home. I mean, we had to believe that. We had to envision it and make it happen.
Absolutely, especially when neither one of us had ever chartered something like that before, right? So it was uncharted territory.
That's right.
So on the personal front, well, I was able to accomplish several things, such as financial decisions that I believe were absolutely the right decisions for me to take and have a better work-life balance last year. I still feel like I have some work to do. And that's why I've decided that I want my word of the year to be believe again.
Kind of like a carryover. You're carrying over believe from 2020 to 2021.
Exactly, because I saw so many positive impacts, in certain aspects of my life, but I feel like I can use that anchor again to realize some of the other things, some of the other goals I have. And, that's exactly the key realization that came to me last year is that when you allow fear and doubt to creep up on you, it will inevitably take you back into the past. So it's absolutely critical to trust and believe in yourself. And looking back, the successes that I had last year really taught me that I can do anything that I set my mind to. And it really all comes down to having a mindset of believing in yourself.
Sonal, yes, you can do anything that you set your mind to. And as your business partner, I am proof of that when I look at what we're doing. So I definitely see the impact of your word in your life. And I think those are some great examples for our listeners. just talking a little bit about my word best. And when I write it all in upper caps, uppercase. I want to really see that like have the best year. And my word best was like a lighthouse for me last year. On the personal front, I feel like I was able to be the best wife and the best mother to my kids, maybe better than I've been able to be before for so many reasons, including the ability that I had to work from home and spend more quality time with them. I mean, prior to this change where I left corporate America and Sonal and I started our business, in a given day during the week, there were some days I never saw my family. And a good day would be that maybe we had like an hour and a half in the evening time. So the quality time is definitely making a difference. And I think for a lot of people that have gone in a work from home situation now, they're getting to spend more time and see their family more. And I would definitely put that in the category of best. On the professional front, we decided to create our own business after getting laid off from our corporate transformation jobs. And we did that in 25 days. I'm really proud of that. And I would say that fits with best really well. And we're on our way to creating our best lives. So listeners, I hope this has given you, a few examples. Having a word of the year is a very powerful practice. So if you haven't already chosen a word for 2021, it is never too late. And I'll just give a hint out here, and we'll talk about this on our next episode, but my word for 2021 is freedom. So moving on, let's pivot now to a completion activity that we did, Sonal and I, with my business coach, or very early in the year. It was January 3rd, I believe. It's a simple but effective way to close out the year, the month, or really any major activity. What we're going to be going through here can apply to lots of things, not just one specific, change of the year. So Sonal and I will share some of our experiences with this process, and we encourage you to reflect and answer these questions on your own. So we'll start with question number 1. And the question is, what did I create in 2020? Sonal, why don't you start?
I'd love to, Christine. And what a great exercise that was. And going through it together was really awesome. I also did something similar using the Deepak Chopra app, which you guys should check out. It's free. So I can speak for both Christine and I when we look at what was done professionally. And like everyone else, 2020 had created so much uncertainty for us and unexpected circumstances in more ways than we could have imagined. One of those was being laid off from our corporate jobs. And we talk about it a lot because it really made a huge impact, in our day-to-day lives. But despite those circumstances, we accomplished a lot. A pretty good list, including creating our own coaching and consulting firm, which specializes in personal and professional transformation. I mean, going from being laid off to launching our own company in 25 days was no small feat. And we also finished the year strong with several consulting and coaching engagements underway. We also launched our very own podcast series, as you guys know, because you were listening to the very first episode of season 2. We did that from scratch last year. And that was something, again, that we had never, ever done before. We finished writing our first book, which is a transformation business thriller titled The F Place. And listeners, we're going to include the link to our book website in our show notes, and we'll be talking about it a lot more in this season. And then finally, we both were able to achieve a flexible lifestyle that truly allows for work-life balance, both for ourselves as well as our employees at the Como Group. And me personally, I was able to spend more quality time with my family, even though it was virtual. We all live thousands of miles away from one another. I checked in on my parents almost daily, even if it was a quick phone call. I went back to writing more handwritten notes and cards to cheer up a friend here and there. I had virtual Zoom birthday parties, happy hours with friends and business associates, cheered on my son from my family room as he graduated from high school in a virtual graduation ceremony. And for the very first time, I was even able to attend my nieces and nephews' concerts virtually, even though we were thousands of miles away. And all of this would not have been possible prior to COVID. Another important factor for me in my quest to strengthen my mindset is continuing to have a strong faith. As humans, we need to have faith. We have all learned that there are things that we have no control over, that que sera, and that there is a greater power. That greater power is something bigger than each and every one of us. Whether you refer to it as God, the universe, whatever, faith means letting go of your worries, feeling peaceful, and knowing that your life has purpose and has been laid out for you and that you will be okay. And finally, like many others, I've emerged from last year really appreciating my own strength. And by this, I mean that I am so much stronger than I ever give myself credit for. And when I look back at all that was accomplished, again, these weren't small, feats. But enough about, my perspective. I would love to get some other perspectives on this as well. How about you, Christine? What lessons did you learn in 2020?
Oh, goodness gracious. Where do I begin? I learn every single day. I'd say I learned about the joys and the challenges of being an entrepreneur, being my own boss. The freedom I experience every day is just absolutely incredible. I feel so fortunate that I get to wake up every day excited to shine a light in the world and serve my customers with excellence. So definitely I learned I was born to be an entrepreneur. Additionally, for those of you that know me, you may know that I do tend to be a people pleaser. And I have at times been hesitant to speak my mind for fear of offending someone or creating conflict. I don't really enjoy conflict. I can do it, but I don't enjoy it. And in 2020, I learned that I can and I should speak up and share my voice, even on some of the most sensitive topics. And I think we've all seen that. And oftentimes these topics end up just becoming kind of the unmentionables, if you will. And I'm learning, and I learned in 2020, and I am learning that I can speak up, and we should, as humanity, we should be able to share differing views and not have it escalate into massive conflict. So I would put that into the category of a 2020 learning.
Well, and I would say, Christine, just having watched you blossom in this particular area, it is incredible to see. And, you're a very classy lady, right? You're always very polite and you balance things. But, sometimes, like you said, it's really important to share your viewpoints and respect that. So I love how much you've taken that to heart. And I've certainly seen, you kind of transform in that space. Very cool.
Well, thank you, Sonal. I hope to transform every single day, but it's nice that you being so close can see that. So that's awesome. Of course, and you kind of mentioned this, but I've listened to podcasts, had never created one, and we learned how to create a podcast. We created a website. We learned how to create an e-commerce store. All of these things that had not been done before, but you jump in and you learn and you just do it. We learned how to write and publish a book. And I can tell you that creative process was incredible. Sonal and I have a way of writing, and we never do this before, but I am the outside in writer, looking at kind of the plots and what's happening from an external sort of outside coming in. And Sonal writes from the inside out, thinking from how the characters are feeling and kind of more colorful. So she adds all of that color. And so together we really complement each other. And if we hadn't jumped in and just done the book, we never would have learned that. And we learned that we love writing books. So you're going to see more books from the Como Group. I also learned, and maybe some of you parents know this, but my daughter is a freshman in high school. So I've been a parent for a while, and this was the first season of my life that I've ever been able to take her to school and pick her up. I've never been able to do that. And now I'm able to do that. And you can learn a lot from a teenager when you're in the car. Sometimes they don't say anything, but when they do talk, you got to listen. I've also learned to pay much more attention to what's going on in our country beyond what's shared by, let's say, the news. Question everything and do your own research so you can come to your own conclusions and don't take everything at face value. And last but not least, I learned for me that my faith in God is bigger than anything else. And I know that He will provide. Sometimes things can feel a little scary, but if you lean back on that faith, like Sona was talking about, you will have peace. So I would like to add here and bring in our marketing and business development director, Kimberly, and ask Kimberly. So Kim, what did you learn in 2020?
So probably the biggest lesson that I learned from 2020 is perseverance and rolling with the punches. If you asked me this time last year what I thought 2020 was going to look like for me, it was going to be totally different than what it actually looked like. And I'm sure this is true for everyone. But especially for me, it just seemed like everything happened. 2019, let me just preface that by saying it was an awesome year for me. I got proposed to in Central Park by my husband. My baby was born like the month before 2019 started. So like that was just a really good year for me as my first year of being a parent. It was my first time to get engaged in New York City and go to a great big city. And so I had lost all my baby weight. Like if you knew me, I had gained 70 pounds with my first pregnancy. So 2019 was all about me getting back to who I was supposed to be. So 2020, I was like, this is it. This is my year. I got my family. I'm engaged. I'm getting married to the love of my life. I have my baby. Like everything's good. Professionally, everything was going really well. And I was doing really good personally. And I was very motivated and very healthy. So I was really looking forward to 2020 and then it hits and I find out pretty much at the beginning of January, I was feeling really, really sick. And I was like, why am I so sick? And I, for the life of me, couldn't figure out why. And I went to the doctor because I finally started to throw up blood. I was throwing up so much, I threw up a little bit of blood. And that's when everything said, go to the doctor on Google. So I went to the doctor. And they were like, hey, we think you might have tuberculosis. And at the time, I didn't know what tuberculosis was. So I looked it up and I was like, how did I get tuberculosis? I'm going to die. Like, because the treatment for tuberculosis is you have to take like the same medication at the same time every day for 6 months. I can't even remember to brush my teeth every single day. So you're going to ask me to take a life-saving medication. I was very freaked out. But Lord behold, I am simply pregnant, and the doctor comes in and is like, hey, you're having baby number 2. So that put a huge wrench into my 2020 plans pretty much at the start of 2020. And I just had to learn how to roll with that punch. We ended up having to move up our wedding date from August 28th to we got married at a courthouse wedding. And it was really beautiful and not what I planned, not what I expected, but we figured it out. And then, March comes around and everything is still doing pretty well. Like I'm working my job. I'm running my own wedding planning business. It's great. And March comes around and COVID hits and I lose my job and I'm pregnant. And I know there's no way I'm going to get another job I think at this time I was like 5 months pregnant. So that was really tough for me. And then the summer comes around and both my in-laws are diagnosed within 2 weeks of each other with cancer. And so my husband is dealing with that. And then July runs around and my husband loses his job. So we are now both unemployed at this point. Global pandemic is happening. Our baby is due in August. It was a crazy mess. But, through it all, we were continuously reminded about all of the great things that we did have going on for us in terms of like our family. We both still had our families to rely on. When we lost our positions, we moved in with my parents and were able to save money. And because of that, being able to have that opportunity, we're still able to get a house at the end of this year. So we persevered through that chaos. And then I have been able to kind of hone my skills as an entrepreneur. And I've done some part-time work for companies. I've gotten to work with this startup company. And now I see myself having a pretty bright future as a teacher and a coach, whereas I didn't have that vision for myself in 2019 or 2020. At least I didn't have that vision and a plan of action, whereas now I have a plan of action. So yeah, I would say definitely the biggest lesson that I have learned out of 2020 is to persevere, that no matter how terrible things seem, you can persevere through it and you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, no matter how cliche that sounds. I think it's almost important to be cliche whenever you're facing things like that sometimes, because it definitely gives you some hope. It was my beacon of hope. There was no other way to get through that last year without having some sense of hope and faith in 2021. So definitely the biggest lesson was perseverance.
That is great, Kim. I love your passion and energy and drive. So thank you for sharing that. Let's switch gears now. Sonal, we've talked a lot about successes and lessons learned. Was there anything for you that you tolerated or resisted in 2020 that you'd like to reflect upon?
Yeah, we did go through this question, didn't we? Well,
Yep.
I have to be honest, and I'm going to show a little vulnerability here. Like you, my friend, I'm a people pleaser, especially when it comes to my personal relationships. And being this way often comes with a cost, meaning it takes a toll on you. And what I learned is there are some classic things that I do. So I tend to be incredibly hard on myself and very self-critical. I also tend to give of myself, which I love doing, by the way. And I know you're a giver too, Christine, especially of my time and resources. But when it comes to my personal life, sometimes it's also to my personal detriment. And then I'll put myself, last. And then probably one more would be, I know what would bring me like more happiness or success. But oftentimes, again, more personally, I don't want to rock the boat. And so I don't prioritize. I don't always prioritize, I should say, myself at times.
I want to come back to, where you were saying you're incredibly hard on yourself, because I see it. I see it in you, and I see it in a lot of people. I think if we're really honest, and it's an opportunity to, reflect on that, own that, and then let's make that change.
Exactly.
Because
I think the hardest thing is to be aware of it. So, and that's really what this exercise is all about is, as you're closing it out, like what were the things, what were the successes, and what were the things that you would like to improve, right? What are the things that you want to transform about yourself and your surroundings?
Yeah. And I think that's where a promise partner comes in, right? Because if I see you being hard on yourself or vice versa, we can call each other out on it and reassure one another. Because I can tell you, I think you're amazing. I think you're a rock star.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So, Christine, do you remember when we went through this next question? I know I really surprised myself with my answer, and I could see it in your face too, that you were a little surprised too. Would you like to share with our listeners what is true for you to let go of in 2020?
Yes. Letting go. There's a reason that song in Frozen called Let It Go. And so many parents, we've heard our kids singing that song. It was so popular. I think there's a reason, Let It Go was so popular. Letting go of burdens from the past or hurtful relationships or anything else in our life that simply is not aligned with our purpose, that is truly freeing. Although I will say it's much easier said than done. But yeah. So let me start by saying I am choosing to let go of stress and fear and anxiety that I experienced in 2020 and many years prior. For the couple of decades that I worked in corporate America, being stressed out with work was it was a normal, commonplace thing. But guys, life is too short for that. So I am choosing to love and get joy from my work every single day. And that is the life that, well, first of all, I'm letting go of the stress and I'm choosing to create something different as we're moving forward. Another thing I'm letting go is people who don't accept me for who I am. And being a people pleaser, this one's hard. Instead, I'm choosing to invest in relationships with people who love me for who I am, warts and all. And no, I don't have any real warts that I'm aware of. But you know what I mean. Nobody's perfect. And oftentimes people love you despite your flaws, shall we say. I'm also letting go of prioritizing everything and everyone else above my own personal health. We all set goals for ourselves, and I always try to make more time for personal health. And it just tends to be the very last thing that I have time to work on when I think about prioritizing family and work and home responsibilities and animals and you name it. Like, why is it that we end up putting ourselves last? And this has been a challenge for me for years. And I'm telling you, I am determined to let this go and leave it in 2020 and leave it there for good. And last but not least, the belief that I have to work long hours in order to be successful. As an entrepreneur and a wife and a mother, I recognize intellectually that I need to work smarter, not harder. And those of you that know me are probably rolling your eyes a little bit because I am a workaholic. I am. But I'm on the path to becoming a recovering workaholic. I don't know. I just made that up, but I think I'd like to become a recovering workaholic and have bigger impact with less effort.
Well, I think you're doing a good job with the recovery. You're on your way. Let's say that. You're on your way.
Sonal, what is true for you to create next in 2021?
Christine, out of all of the things that we've talked about, this question excites me so much because it builds excitement and intent on all the great things to come this year. We're going to really build on this question during our next episode, which is all about creating your vision. But to give you an idea of what's true for me to create this year, listeners, on January 1st of this year, Christine and I spent half a day refining our strategic goals for the year for our company, the Como Group. And it encompassed everything from our revenue goals to how many copies of our book we wanted to sell, to the type of clients we wanted to work with, and even looking at how we would positively impact our clients and community personally through our transformation coaching and workshops and much, much more. So on a professional front, that is absolutely what I want us to create this year. Personally, though, as my parents and my children get older, I continue to realize that the time I spend with them is priceless. So I want to do everything in my power to really harvest quality time with them and show them my unconditional love for them. I also believe, like you, Christine, that I can do a better job taking care of myself. And so I want to focus on integrating daily meditation and nature walks into my self-care routine because it really gives me time to, think a little bit and look inwards.
Yeah. And I love, Sonal and I've started this practice. I wouldn't say we're doing it every day, but we're trying to make it part of the Como culture, if you will, is planning a short meeting each day where because we're checking in. I mean, we're business partners. We're checking in multiple times per day to take one of those check-ins, put on our headphones and go for a walk and have a walk and talk. And that way we can, do business, but also get that healthy aspect into our lives. And we can do it in the middle of the day, which never could have done that before.
And I do enjoy those walks and talks so much, Christine. And I think that was one of the best habits that we integrated into our day to day. So you're absolutely correct. Finally, listeners, both Christine and I have come to the realization that we really enjoy writing. And so we would like to author another book this year, especially since we've enjoyed the process so very much.
And we are going to author another book this year.
We sure are. If we could do it in 6 months last year, hey, we actually have a plan this time around and know how to do it.
Yeah.
There's no stopping us. So listeners, we hope that sharing the process for how we closed out the year was helpful to you. Once you do it, you'll understand why it's a truly transformative experience. And literally, you can sit down with these 5 questions. You can do it in about an hour. And we're going to post all of this on our website, so you'll be able to access it in case you haven't been able to take notes. But quickly, I'd like to share a quote by Mehmet Murat Ildan. And it goes like this. In the new year, never forget to thank your past years because they enabled you to reach today. Without the stairs of the past, you cannot arrive at the future. And I think that's a really nice thought to close out the year. On our next episode, we're going to focus on how to set your vision for the year. So until then, take some time for yourself to make sure you've closed out the year for yourself. And all the steps, like I said, that we covered today will be included in the episode highlights and can also be found on our website at thecomofactor.com. Thank you for joining us today. And until next time, let your light shine.
Yes, let it shine.